Ladies and gentlemen, it is Tuesday, and that means it is another league change. Fortunately for us, Great League is still around here, but we will also be having Master Premier. It's called Master Premier, but it's Master League, basically no legendaries. It's a pretty good format, to be honest. It's one of these formats that I always talk about. If you find a team, you can definitely gain a ton of rating because it is so condensed. Which is the formats that I really like. Unfortunately for us, it is in Master League, so some of these mon are very tough to get. The XLs for really be competitive and all that. I could go over a list of the mon that'll be in this cup, but I think that the teams I have created for our top 7 teams, or really it's top 6 teams and one like fringe team that I think will actually be pretty good. But personally haven't tried. But yeah, I think we'll go over basically all the mon that are great in this cup. I really think it's not that many. It's probably like 12-ish mon, and then some of their like Dragonite's the best dragon, but there are other dragons that kind of do the same thing. So you could use some of those other dragons, and that technically would mean that there are more mon in this cup, but not really. They're kind of similar. Like, if I use Dragonite, is that the same as like Goodra? Well, Goodra is a little different, so that's not a great example, but like Como O or things like that. So let's go ahead and get into the videos. But first, if you haven't, definitely hit the subscribe button. And let's do it. All right, we're going to be going over our first team here. This is a fairly new type of team. Florges always been around, perennial all-star of this format, along with like Dragonite and Gyarados. And I just want to say also, any of these mon that I have listed here can also be the shadow versions, but I imagine that's even harder to get. So I'm not listing out the shadow versions, I'm listing out the normal ones. But if you have the shadow and they're close to hundos, I personally think I would be using the shadows of the mon if I had them, like Shadow Rhyperior, Shadow Dragonite, Shadow Gyarados. These are things that I do have the Shadow Dragonite, but I don't have the other two, and I don't have the dust to even make them if I did have them. So if you do have the shadows and you want to use them, definitely do it. And I'll mention if they are possible shadows when I go over the team. So Rhyperior can be a shadow here, and then the shadow version would be crazy good. Again, Florges, perennial all-star in this format, and then Primarina has always been an all-star in this format as well, and it's gotten buffed more recently by having the move Hydro Cannon instead of going just all the way to that Hydro Pump. I do like Waterfall version of Primarina, which we did see a little bit in Open Master League, and that's also another thing to mention. Rhyperior and Primarina saw a lot of play in Open Master League last time it was around. In fact, it was around literally last week as well, if you wanted to do that, but most people do Great League. And considering they're strong enough to like play with the legendary mon, they're definitely strong enough to play with the non-legendaries and do very well. So another thing on the Primarina you can go for as the coverage move, the fairy coverage move, you can go Moonblast or Disarming Voice. I think technically Disarming Voice is probably a little better just because it's faster to get to, but I prefer the hard-hitting move of Moonblast. But again, probably Disarming Voice does a little bit better. Let's go over some of the bullet points. It's a very basic team. You're going to see a lot of this team. I think this might be the strongest. I'll say strongest. It's like the most obvious team. So while it can be the strongest, people are definitely going to know what you're running when they start to see you use some of these mon against them. Florges is rank 1 on PvPoke, but there is something to think about in the Florges. To have Florges on your team has literally 0 coverage outside of Fairy, so it doesn't have a lot of, like, let's say neutral play, and it definitely does bad in bad matchups. So if you get caught in there with a metagross, you have no chance. So what are the core breakers? Let's go over these. Golisopod and metagross. I actually do have a shadow metagross. I think it's a 98. I don't think it's fully built out though, but I have to go check. I haven't really played Master Premier in such a long time. Golisopod is actually really good in this cup. And it's a core breaker of this team, obviously, having the water type and then winning neutral matchups possibly against Florges and resisting Primarina's Waterfall and having a water move for Rhyperior. So those are things to really think about. I will say, just before we get too far into the video, I think things like Golisopod is a very safe swap. It is very frail though, but in its good matches, it's great. And then, what's another like new mon coming in? Like Feraligatr is going to be pretty good in this league as well. Doesn't have to really contend with as many the legendary mons, so its bulk is not really holding it back. Let's go over Team 2 here. Dragonite, Magnezone, and Golisopod. We were just talking about Golisopod being a really good safe swap. Dragonite, again, with Florges and Metagross and Gyarados. Those are like the all-time goats of the format. Greatest of the format, I should say. And, yeah, I think I have a Shadow Dragonite. I think it's a terrible one, but I know it's built. 15 attack. If you really have infinite dust and you don't care too much about that resource, if you have a 15 attack, it's almost just as good. I mean, you're at least going to be winning CMP or tying CMP. Another thing to look out for, a lot of people will have the best buddy of some of these mon, and they'll be beating you even if you have the hundo on CMP. So that's really something to look out for. Look out for the little badge that's on there. It's usually in the neck region or on the head. Magnezone, Shadow Magnezone, if you have it, use it. I don't. Yeah, some things to go over on this team. Magnezone is definitely your finisher, or if you can find a Gyarados, basically. Gyarados is going to be everywhere in this format. Whether or not the Gyarados is running Waterfall or Dragon Breath, I can't say for sure. It depends on people's teams and what they want to use. But Magnezone, double super effective Volt Switches, you just burn through Magnezone. And then you really pressure their shields. You burn through the Gyarados. But you really pressure the shields on the back end too, because Wild Charge is such a hard-hitting move. Imagine they have that Dragonite in the back. They're still flying at some point, even though the Dragon does resist electric. It's going to be doing neutral and a ton of damage, especially if you have that Shadow one. And again, not too much to go over on the Golisopod. We talked about it a little bit in the last one. Definitely kind of frail compared to some of these mon, like Dragonite, but really good coverage. I like Aerial Ace Liquidation. Technically, you could go X-Scissor, which is more neutral, but it's actually really bad against certain things like the Ghost types, the Steel types, the Fairy types, which are a lot of this cup. So Aerial Ace, I feel like giving you that a little bit of extra coverage. Let's go to
Catching you here in the middle of the video.
Definitely subscribe if you haven't.
Primarina,
again, I have Disarming Voice on there.
All right, back to the video.
As the one that's most used. I just personally prefer Moonblast, but I understand Disarming Voice, and I might even change my opinion on that. I'm starting to already think Disarming Voice is definitely the way to go. But Moonblast still a hard-hitting move, basically like one-shot things. And then Metagross, that pillar of the format that we were talking about, just having a Steel type against Dragonite is very good. And I should have said Primarina, obviously being water is going to be resisting Golisopod, and being fairy going to be double resisting Dragonite. It really puts you in a bind because you want to be in there in the Magnezone matchup, but you kind of can't be. And then Golisopod's actually pretty good against Metagross. I guess the thing you have to really look out for is the Magnezone matchup, because Wild Charge doesn't KO, and you're going to be tempted to shield a possible Earthquake, which can be tough if they bait you. All right, third team. This is a little bit of a weird one. Hisuian Avalugg is in this one. Goodra and Gyarados. Goodra, definitely a new addition since it had its Community Day move, or had its own Community Day and got the move Thunder Punch. So really adds to the coverage against something like a Gyarados, which is really nice. Double super effective electric. And then we have our own Gyarados in the back there. Again, Shadow Gyarados possible. If you have it, use it. I know I definitely don't, but that is a sweet mon. If you have the Shadow, definitely do it. In fact, I'm already going to say right now, if you have the Shadow, let me know. I would love to do a video of the Shadow Gyarados because I know it's insane. I really wish I had one. And even, to be fair, even if I got one, well, I couldn't TM it off anyway. I couldn't TM Frustration off anyways. But even if I had one in my inventory, I don't have the dust to make a 100% Shadow Gyarados. Anyways, we have Avalugg in the lead here. Something to really think about in the Avalugg here is that it's not the best mon. It's definitely, we'll say, I mention it all the time. It's like one of these RPS mon. You really need to be in a good match, and all I mean by that is you really need to be in a good matchup to really take advantage of it. Luckily for us, the dragons exist. Dragonite's definitely going to be out there. It's actually pretty good against Gyarados, even though it does have Aqua Tail. It's not going to die in one move anyways. And you have Rock Slide, you have Icy Wind, which is neutral. Rock Slide's super effective, and yeah, find a good matchup. Luckily, Gudra and Gyarados are very safe, so you're basically doing double safe swaps and trying to find something for this lead. Also, always remember anything with Icy Wind, if you get it into that last matchup and you have like a little bit of Avalugg left and you throw the Icy Wind into it, they're going to be stuck with that attack drop for the entirety of the rest of the game. So, things to really think about there. Let's see, did I say everything? Yeah, we'll go to the core breakers. Goldingo, which you notice also has gotten a buff to move, Astonish, which wasn't around until this season. So I do think Goldingo's... It was very fringe, but still used because it was very good against metagross. It's going to be even better against metagross now, and it always had the big finishing moves, Shadow Ball, Focus Blast. So it can always take a shield, but it was always about... How many shields do I have to give to Goldingo to get the shields back? And do I even get them back in time because they're going to be outpacing me because I only have big moves? Those are things to think about with Goldingo. Those problems still exist, but if you do have a shield advantage, it is an amazing finisher. And then Avalugg itself, you're going to be neutral into the Avalugg matchup, and then you're going to be running into a dragon, which, like I already said, Avalugg is extremely good against being an ice type, and then being able to throw Icy Wind, which is super effective and lowering the attack, going to really screw the dragons over. And it's actually pretty good against Gyarados. Like I said before, Aqua Tail not even getting close to KOing. This thing's actually pretty bulky, even though water is super effective against it. All right, the fourth team here, we're going to have a Feraligatr, which is, again, another new addition here. I personally like Ice Beam as the coverage move. Obviously, we're in a Dragon League, so having something super effective against the dragons is really going to be good for you there. Again, Florges lead. Florges doesn't have a lot of coverage. Has no extra coverage, I should say. And then Dragonite here, if you have the Shadow, use it. Feraligatr, I guess it has the Shadow too. I didn't even think about that. If you have Infinite Dust and you have this mon, or you want to make it, it probably is going to be pretty good to get shields as the Shadow. But Shadow Dragonite, I know, is an insane mon in this format. Can definitely even win you some of the Steel matchups. I think I mentioned that later on in a different team, but it's... oh no, I mentioned it right here. Steel types can be tough in the lead, but Dragonite, and especially Shadow Dragonite, can really put pressure on these mon that would... more pressure than you would think, even though they do resist Dragon Breath, just because, again, none of these are legendaries, and as far as total stats are concerned, Dragonite's almost like a legendary mon. It's just very, very good stats. I think that's it for this team. I also just so happen to mention Florges, Dragonite, Gyarados, and Metagross are the best mon in this cup in general. They always have been, apparently always will be. I mean, unless we see something else come up, these have been around forever and have always dominated Master Premier. Let's go to the core breakers here. We have Magnezone, a big core breaker because it's a steel type, so it resists fairy moves, so going to be good against Florges. Even though it is a steel type, so it technically resists the Dragon Breath, and even though it only has Wild Charge, Dragonite is still partial flying, so it's going to be neutral. Those Wild Charge is going to hit hard, and then Wild Charge super effective against the water typing of Feraligatr. So Magnezone, really tough for this team to face. Another tough one here is Florges, just because it's going to be neutral against itself in the lead. Super effective and really unbeatable against the really undefeatable, I guess, with the Dragonite there in that matchup. And then kind of neutral, actually, into Feraligatr, which, if you can get Florges into neutral matchups, that's actually pretty good at the end of the day, considering it only has the fairy coverage. All right, fifth team here. This is a pretty cool one, to be honest. We have Gyarados in the front, so sort of a safe lead situation, with Goldingo as the finisher and Ursaluna as basically the safe swap. Again, if you can find a good matchup for Goldingo, you should definitely take it, because even after you get out of that good matchup, having that extra energy will be able to give you extra shield advantage, possibly with your big moves. Shadow Ball basically hits everything pretty hard, and Focus Blast obviously is a very strong move. Ursaluna can be built many different ways. We'll just go over all of the things, I guess. I prefer Ice Punch in a Dragon League, and then High Horsepower, super effective against the Steel types, and Tackle pretty neutral into everything outside of the Steel types as well. It's also resisted by Rock, I suppose. Ursaluna also has access to Thunder Punch, Fire Punch, and Swift. I think PB Poke likes people running Swift. Kind of a neutral move against a lot of things, so maybe it's better. I don't know. I still prefer Ice Punch, but I'm willing to change if that's just not the same as it used to be. I've definitely used Ursaluna before in these leagues. It actually can be Shadow as well. I definitely don't have a Shadow one of these, but I know it can be Shadow. Let's go to the core breakers for this team. Again, Magnezone, which is kind of weird because Ursaluna is a ground type, but really it's the other two. It's very obviously insanely strong, double super effective against Gyarados, and it is just generally in this neutral matchup against Goldingo very good. It outpaces to the Wild Charge. The only thing is you are taking a decent amount of damage from the Astonish, so maybe you can go to the 2s there. I'm not going to be 100% on that, so... Primarina, also very good against Gyarados. Gyarados has only moves that are resisted by Primarina, and you're going to have that Disarming Voice, which is going to be neutral against Gyarados, so you're always going to win that matchup. Waterfall, going to give you super effective against the ground typing of Ursaluna, and then just a pretty overall neutral matchup against Goldingo as well. Probably Primarina wins that. I imagine it actually gets to its moves faster still. All right, 6th team. I actually have Shadow Annihilate on here. So a couple things on the Shadow Annihilate. You notice the moveset here is the moveset that we currently have, but actually like 80% of the way through this cup, Community Day will happen. This cup ends November 12th. Community Day happens November 10th. So you're going to have access to the new move of Rage Fist, which is a Shadow move. I don't know if it's going to change this at all, but I just wanted to mention that we are using the current moveset, even though counter is nerfed, the Shadow almost kind of unnerfing it, doing that extra bit of damage. And Annihilate, if you find a good matchup, it's going to just absolutely crush. Something like Metagross, Rhyperior, Magnezone, these are going to be very good matchups for Annihilate, and these Mon are pretty used, and you, again, kind of the same way that Goldingo is, you have access to this very hard-hitting move, Shadow Ball, which is going to hit a lot of things in this cup for neutral, and Annihilate's got a very high attack stat. Again, the odds of you having a Hundo Shadow, pretty low, I guess, but I know I do have a Hundo Annihilate, but I think it's only like level 44, something like that, 45. I definitely would still... I'm not telling you to do it, but I know I'm probably going to use it as a 45. I don't know how much stats you actually gain for some of these, so I think it's fine. Again, with Florges in the lead, and then Feraligatr being one of the safer swaps in this meta in the back. So you can basically go up shields, I guess, with Feraligatr, and still lose switch but gain shield advantage, and then eventually get into Annihilate, hopefully being very good against the things in the back. And then obviously the double coverage here in the back is against Steel types, which Florges is pretty bad against. And again, it's just a basic ABV comp because Florges is very strong against the Dragon types, which are going to be pretty good against the Water type of Feraligatr, and something like Dragonite being flying against a Fighting type, obviously very good. Let's go into the core. Okay. The core breakers, rather, is going to be Gliscopod, which is going to be that water type. So it's going to be kind of resisting everything that, all the charge moves that Feraligatr has. That's something to think about. Going to be pretty neutral into Florges, and going to be having super effective Shadow Claw against the Annihilate, because it is a ghost type at the end of the day, as well as having Aerial Ace, which is going to be super effective against the fighting type of Annihilate, and then Annihilate having counter, which is going to be resisted by the bug typing on Gliscopod there. And then Goldingo, a very good matchup against Annihilate as well, having Astonish. Goldingo is also a ghost, although it is a steel as well, so counter is going to be resisted 1 times because ghost double resist counter, and the ghost typing double resist counter, and the steel typing going to be taking super effective from the fighting there. Yeah. And then it's steel type, so it's good against Florges. So next team, and this is my last team here, and this is kind of the fringe one that I wanted to go over. So Skeledirge has insane coverage in this cup, to be honest. Incinerate is going to be super effective against the steel types. Disarming Voice is going to be super effective against the dragon types. Shadow Ball going to be hitting most things for very high neutral damage. So it's very good. I know I have a Skeledirge that is also like level 44, 45. It's basically the same thing as the Annihilate I have. So I probably will use it. I actually used it in a factions battle, and I think it's actually very good. If you get it into, it also resists Fairy because it's a fire type. So right there, you're beating Fairy and Steel, and you have coverage against Dragon. That sounds very good. Now, you're still losing to Dragonite, but I'm just saying maybe you gained energy throughout the other parts of the matchup, and you are able to pull up against... pull up on the Dragonite there. Anyways, in the back we do have Florges and Gyarados. One of the things about Gyarados, and I probably should have mentioned it earlier, is since it does have Dragon Breath, it is kind of like that pseudo Dragon type in this cup, but it doesn't have the same weakness that Dragon types would have. It's not taking super effective from other dragons. It's not taking super effective from the fairies. Although you still basically lose to the fairy type mon because Dragon Breath obviously double resisted. But basically you're not taking super effective from the dragons, but you're dealing super effective back to them. That's one of the things to really think about. And let's look at the core breakers for this team, and then we'll be done. I know it's been a long one, but I just wanted to go over the teams that I think are going to be very good in this cup. Goodra is going to be tough against this team. Obviously, is a dragon type, going to be resisting Incinerate and going to be throwing back Aqua Tail, which is super effective against Skeledirge, and you're going to be getting to those moves way faster. You're going to be outpacing to the Disarming Voice. Also has Thunder Punch coverage for the Gyarados, so it leaves you in this bind of probably you're going to end up staying in the matchup with... I was going to say Feraligatr. It is a different kind of gator here. It is Skeledirge. And probably just end up losing that matchup and then going into the Florges and then hoping that Gyarados can just win you in the back. But yeah, that's why that's going to be a core breaker. It's going to be tough to beat that mon. Also, Primarina, going to be the biggest core breaker to this team. Again, just has a waterfall for the Skeledirge, has Hydro Cannon for the Skeledirge, not really taking super effective from any of these moves, so basically going to be going for the neutral Shadow Ball there. And then Hard Walls Gyarados, because it's water and fairy, meaning that all of its moves are at the very least resisted, some of them double resisted, and then a neutral matchup against Florges. So the big, scary mon is going to be Primarina for that team. All right. That was a long video. I think that's the longest team video I've ever had. I feel like we had to go over a lot just because Master Premier hasn't been around in a while. And there actually have been pretty decent changes to this meta. But again, you see a lot of the same pillars of the format still around. Metagross, Dragonite, Primarina, Gyarados. Or why did I say Primarina? Gyarados and Florges. I guess Primarina's kind of been around too. Yeah, and you're going to see them a lot. Again, this league basically only has like 8 to 12 mons. So I think if you want to climb, I said at the beginning of the video, this is definitely a league to do it in. And yeah, it's gone on too long. Hit the upvote button, hit the like button. That's a thumbs up, something. This is going to end up being a blooper, isn't it? No, we're just going to keep pushing through. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't. Let me know what teams you're using in the comments below for Master League Premier. Peace. Hey, thank you for watching the video, and if you want to continue to support me, definitely click that subscribe button. You'll see any content coming out, and if you want another video on this same league for some more tips and tricks to other teams, check that video out right there, and I'll see you in the next one.